broadcasting. And as a very young man, I listened to shows like Dimension X, 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 X. No, it's not to be interpreted that way, Richard. And 2000 plus, and some of those things. And I don't know that I considered myself a student of sci-fi. But I did have, and I got into the music business, and some of you know the story. I traveled with a group called the Four Preps. We were out of high school, and our producer produced Frank Sinatra's records and was the first president of NARAS. But my dream was broadcasting. One of the shows I grew up on was Star Trek. And you know, it was not a drop-dead success story. In fact, the cost of doing a show, and I was not exactly thrilled by you'd have the the bad guy of the week, which could be a rock on the sound stage. It really wasn't exactly exciting. I always hoped that if we ever got into that world, we could do something better. I had an idea, and it was born of Howard Hughes, who was not just a father of aviation, but I mean, he did some truly outrageous things with trying to fly that golden goose or whatever. Gets it off the ground for about 40 feet. But I mean, he was a pioneer of aviation. He also moved to the desert. He moved to the inn in Vegas, and I know people who were there when the train stops outside of town, and they whisked him in. And I had an idea as a young writer that wouldn't it have been interesting if his goal was that computers had sensed that this world as we know it had a finite end coming up. And if you know anything about 2012 and some of the dates that we are dealing with the Aztec or the Mayan calendar or any of those things, these are all possibilities. But the point was, my episode started with all of these people that were the cover of Time magazine being invited to this place. And it's just a hotel, but then there's a rumble. And it starts to rumble, and you realize, and somebody works their way up, would be a hero in the future, and they work their way up, and they realize they're on a flight deck, and they are taking this ship off, because this planet is ending, and they had the best athletes, the best doctors, the best everything, and so forth. This was my first dream, and I came to Universal because Henry Mancini, who wrote some great songs and things, said, I know the president, bring your idea over there. And indeed it worked. They didn't want to buy that because Star Trek had just collapsed. It wasn't going anyplace. Nobody wants science fiction. So they let me go around and visit other producers and talk to them. And I talked to them, and they would say, well, we don't really have an opening for you. One is a guy who was producing a show called Ironside. He didn't hire me. I got even years later. Didn't work again after I got through. It's not quite that bad, but it actually did work for me, but that didn't work. And a couple of other things. And another show was home. They had just bought it for mid-season, which means you have no scripts or any staff. And it was called It Takes a Thief. So I got involved with that show, and I loved it. A few years later, and I sold a show called Alias Smith and Jones. Okay, it's a slight parallel to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Sue me. The truth is, when you go in, anybody here wants to sell something, they really want you to sell something that's like something, because they don't have the guts to buy it if it's really totally unknown and they don't get it. So anyway, I sold that show, and then along came a chance. Star Wars was a phenomenon. sci-fi came back. At that point, they wanted to do the day the Earth stood still, they wanted to do this, they wanted to do that. I reversed my concept. Instead of people from Earth going out there, it's people from another dispensation way out in space trying to find Earth. It's not a huge leap of faith, but it was a chance to get something on the air, and that's what you look for when you go into a network. So, it started with an idea, and your idea will progress. And if you want to sell a car, they should all look like Mercedes, or they should all look like something else, because the kids who are buying across the desk want the security of it being something like something else. We were very fortunate to have everyone in the country latch onto this. I think we had every magazine. We had every star of our show on, with the possible exception of you, because they didn't like your looks. Dirk Benedict was up there, Lauren was up there a lot, and you gave me $1.50 and I got you on People. So, anyway.
Thank you. Thank you.